Good evening. This is The Report with me, John Rees. On tonight's programme, we'll be taking a look at rising tensions between Buddhist and Muslim communities in Sri Lanka. And we also investigate the threat to the antiquities of Iraq. But first, today marks the beginning of the government's Counter Terrorism Awareness Week, with the Home Secretary unveiling more legal powers for the police. Sara Silvestri has this.
The threat of a terrorist attack in Britain today has been described by security experts as being almost inevitable. This chilling assessment comes before a raft of further counter-terrorism measures is announced by Theresa May. Speaking to an audience of security experts earlier today, May gave details of around 40 terrorist plots that have been disrupted by the UK security services since the 7/7 attacks in 2005.
So when the security and intelligence agencies tell us that the threat we face is now more dangerous than at any time before or since 9/11, we should take notice.
May also introduced a comprehensive new counter-terrorism and security bill, which she'll present to Parliament on Wednesday. This will include extensive measures to tackle radicalisation, strengthen TPIMs, and make sure British companies are not inadvertently paying ransoms to kidnappers. Her speech comes at the start of Counter Terrorism Awareness Week, a week-long police initiative involving more than 3,000 officers to inform the public on how they can help fight terrorism. The National Policing Lead for Counter-Terrorism, Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley, said, "We don't want to scare people, but we do want them to understand the threat and be vigilant to things that are out of place or suspicious and report it to the police. We need businesses to check that their security measures are effective and train their staff to detect potential threats and, if necessary, respond to an attack." But many are critical of these wide-ranging reforms, with major concerns over the potential implications of recruiting the public to look out for suspicious behaviour. Today, the Islamic Human Rights Commission released a statement saying that the further promotion of the Prevent strategy will lead to yet more alienation. Far from stopping terrorism, the strategy, which has drawn massive criticism for legitimising religious profiling and intelligence gathering on Muslim communities, seems to have encouraged it. Tighter security comes with a price, and no doubt civil liberty groups will be paying close attention to how these latest measures will further encroach on our personal freedoms. Sara Silvestri, The Report.
With me to discuss this is Dr Sara Silvestri, who's Senior International Politics Lecturer at City University. Sarah, welcome to the programme. The government surely has enough terrorism measures on the statute book already without adding any others?
Yes, in fact, there is plenty of legislation that was passed in the course of the 3 decades and was intensified during the 2000 period. So most of the provisions are already there, and in fact also this decision to widen out the discussion of terrorism to the civil society level and to the public has already been part of the Prevent strategy in the previous legislation.
So is the main effect of this, well, two things perhaps. There's some political theatre involved, but practically there's an attempt to really get a wider section of the population actively engaged with the authorities, isn't there?
Yes, but all forms of counter-terrorism have always relied on somehow gaining the support of the public, whether by engaging with them openly or whether by just ensuring that the public trusts the police and the intelligence community. So in a way, a lot of counter-terrorism is based on the psychological level, in the same way as terrorism itself is based on fear constructed on a psychological level even before engaging on the physical level of violence. So counter-terrorism is fighting terrorism using this psychological level and trying to, in a way, play with the concept of fear and ensuring that the public puts all its confidence in the authorities.
Do you find something slightly sinister about this? Do you think there's something slightly Orwellian about the way the government's proceeding?
Well, this it's one part of the government functions. All countries have their own intelligence and community and the policing forces. So it's not something special that is happening, completely extraordinary. Although it is extraordinary that there is a prioritization of the topic of terrorism as opposed to other societal problems that we're facing today.
Do you worry when you hear somebody like the senior policeman at the Met who's in charge of counter-terrorism saying, well, it's for the politicians to decide how far we can go. We're just interested in getting as many powers as we can to stop terrorism. Wouldn't you have thought it was also part of the police's role to look at those pieces of legislation which guarantee the civil liberties of the rest of us?
Well, the police has to work within the limitations and the structures set by the law, but the police in itself is not the main body in our country that is supposed to take care of the principles of democracy. In a way, the parliament is the seat where democracy is preserved, and which is also the body that represents democracy. So in a way, it is right to say that the politicians are those that are meant to make sure that the laws are compliant with legislation and with principles that are fully part of our democratic way of thinking, and then the police has to follow through.
Yes, I take that point, but it's a little bit unnerving to think that the way the police approach this is to be constantly pushing against those limits, and then it's up to somebody else to look after civil liberties. I mean, civil liberties are, after all, part of the law as well.
Well, I'm sure that there is plenty of policemen that have also a conscience and are trying to do the job with a certain level of morality and of balance. But in terms of institutional structures, the job of the police is to do a certain type of tasks. And in a way, anytime you go down the avenue of talking to specialized agencies, they will become very narrow in understanding the role that they have to play and the goal that they have to reach. Whereas the bigger, more philosophical debates are meant to be played out in another sphere. Of course, all these institutions are part of the democratic system, and therefore they have to abide by its principles.
How do you assess the threat of terrorism in the UK at the moment compared to other historical periods? I mean, it might be said that for instance, compared to the terror that the IRA were involved in, this is a less severe threat. I mean, after all, the IRA did blow up the entire cabinet, did assassinate a member of the royal family, did put a mortar into the back of number 10 Downing Street. That hasn't happened this time round.
Yes, but as I said earlier, you have to try to understand terrorism not only through the lens of only through the physical violence that is produced, but you have to look at this psychological dimension, this more intangible level. And from that perspective, one could argue that the contemporary type of terrorism is more diffuse and more present as a ghost in our lives, as opposed to the terrorism related to the IRA period. And the loyalist and the IRA violence was produced around a very specific target, whereas now the target has become much more diffuse.
Do you think it'll work?
I don't know. To measure the effectiveness of the counterterrorism, you cannot only measure the counterterrorism measures themselves, but you have to understand the context and how the politics of the world are playing out at the same time. So you cannot give the solution, expect the solution to come only from the application of counterterrorism law. That would be very naive.
What do you think would work then if it's not all down to counterterrorism?
Well, we do need in a way to have a sort of global response or awareness of the problems that are affecting society, and to have a very big picture of how issues are interconnected and conflicts are interconnected with many aspects of politics that are maybe more remote if we look at the surface.
OK. Well, unfortunately, we'll have to move on now. And here's Ayman Al-Rafai with the rest of today's news.